Welcome to Chill Under Pressure. I'm Les.
And I'm Adam.
I'm Rodney.
Today, we're here to talk about where we've come up in the industry a little bit and just make introductions. So,
give a little background on who we are. I mean, figure your first episode, you better tell people who you are and how you got here.
There you go.
I drove.
Work. You drove?
Yeah.
All right. I also drove. Adam? From this undisclosed location in the
I happen to stay at this lair regularly.
Imagine
this
that.
is my office.
So. Imagine that. Well, I guess I can. You and I started fairly close to the same time. You're just much younger than I was. So
I don't know much. That's kind of generous. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
You can tell by the gray in the beard that there's a little bit.
Well, I color that in.
Oh,
so guys
just
like you don't
just for men, but you put the gray in.
I put the gray in that way. The people, So, but yeah, I remember being approached by Rich Dykstra, who had started Refrigerant Management Services way back in the day, and I started working for him on a truck sales route. They said, "Hey, we're there's no actual pay. Well, it's all commission." And so I decided, that sounds like a good time. So he had this route style refrigerant truck, went out, recovered recovery cylinders, sold refrigerant off the truck. We had a tool bin. We sold Yellow Jacket tools off there. We built a platform so we could change the Y valves out of the recovery tanks. And so that's how I got my start. I did that for a while, built it up, and then went to Rich and said, "Hey, we can do better. Let's build another truck and I'll hire someone." Got them up and running and figured like, hey, let's go to Tucson. I'll hire myself. I'll hire someone down there. And then we just went from there and expanded it out.
Yeah. So that was mid 90s. And shortly before that, I was hanging out with Rich and had the same basic start, a little bit younger, as Les pointed out. But I started out feeding the fish in the fish tank and driving the forklift to empty the trash every day or every couple hours. Whenever somebody put something in the trash, I found a need to drive the forklift back to the dumpster to empty the
Lunch is over. Grab the forklift.
That's right. I started out, the time, Rich would bring back all these green cans, right? These R22 cans, all the refrigerants, but a lot of it was R22 cans. And so he'd stack them up and he had this big bin, and then they'd have to the heels would have to be recovered. And so he had this big blue, I call it the octopus machine, because it started out with just 2 hoses on it, but pretty soon I figured out that if I just put more hoses on it, it didn't really go faster, but it kind of went faster. It could only pump so fast, but with more hoses, I had to do less,
Right,
I could wait longer. I wasn't moving as much. So I could hook them all up and then get going. And because they had the one-way valves in them, you get the one, and as it's going, you'd get the next one and next one, next one. And then that first one was actually got lower. So it worked out pretty well until you had to get to a vacuum. Then it was a slow wait. But so I started doing that. And then about the time, actually a little bit past when you came on, I ended up going full-time for Rich and was terrible at that. But I was not very good. I started out doing recovery. That was great. And I was on the roof and I was doing job site recovery, and I was all commissioned like Les was. I had the choice actually, because I'd been working in the plant, and Rich had said, "Hey, you can keep your hourly wage or you can go straight commission." And I really struggled with that decision. And so finally I called him, like, I don't know. I mean, how do you make that decision? Like, what if I don't make any money? Like, what if there's no work?
Right.
And Rich laughed and he goes, "How long do you think I'm going to keep paying you if there's no work?" Like, that's a good point.
Right. There you go.
So did the commission thing, and that worked out really well. And of course, I didn't think of that as sales at all. I thought of that as just me providing good service, right? Just get out there and do the work hard.
Right.
And then the faster I went, the more money I made per hour. Right?
Yeah.
What did you think?
Weird.
What a weird concept. And, don't punish me for my speed kind of deal. So yeah, I started doing that. And then as I progressed, I got the opportunity through you to get into one of the route trucks in that area. And it turned out I was really, really bad at that.
That was post RMS though. Yeah.
No, it was right at that
juncture.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm dove into my story. We'll go kind of back and forth, but I was doing that, and I was really, really bad at it. And It's because I thought I was like supposed to sell everybody.
Right.
Like I was the Kirby vacuum sales
Just
guy. Like
trying too hard.
yeah. Les said, stop trying to sell people stuff. Just don't try to sell anybody anything. At least that's how I heard it. Les always looks at me and he's like, I don't remember saying that.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I heard it.
Right.
And it worked. Like I went in, I just started talking to people and said, hey, if you need something, I got it. And I can help you out with that. And let's do that job for you. And all of a sudden it took off. So I went from literally, I think, the worst sales rep in the country to I got the number 1 spot for a while. It was pretty cool. So.
Well, if it worked, you should take credit for saying that.
Yeah. Well, I said something. It doesn't matter what it was.
Whatever it was inspirational.
Whatever he remembers is fine with me. So
well, it's my story. I'm telling that way.
That's right. No, but it's a different switch because sometimes you switch roles, right? And you think you got to do something different to continue the success you've been having.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. And I remember, when you, Rich, and I started Rapid, right? I mean, I've been commissioned for a long time, and then all of a sudden it's like everything is yours on the line and stuff like that. And then there's just little things that I'm like, what's off, right? There's obviously something off because these used to be,
easy calls.
Yeah. And
I totally lost my mojo when we started Rapid. I'd say that
you have to get your headspace right. So you get back and go, okay, just go back the basics, provide a superior service, be flexible, find out what the needs are and solve that. And so it took a little while, I think we all had that a little bit when we first started Rapid, and then, got that taken care of. And
yeah, when I started in Rapid, I had the same thing. I thought, oh man, when RMS ended up closing or being sold and so on, then we left there. Mm-hmm. I was cocky. Like, it wasn't even just confident. Like, I was cocky. I mean, if you didn't use the service we were providing, you were an idiot. Like, you were. And then as I matured later, I realized that I just hadn't explained it well enough to you yet, because I still believed the same thing. It just wasn't that you're an idiot. It's just that I didn't do a good job. Yeah. But when we started Rapid, man, I would walk in the door, and again, it was just off enough. Like, there was enough fear in there that now if they don't buy, now it's me. Now they don't want what I don't know what it is, but something like they don't want me, or they don't want my service. They don't, with the extra weightiness of everything being on the line, it certainly has an impact. I mean, that's true in any business venture I've ever done. The moment you start, it's like, ooh, it carries a certain weightiness, and it actually affects you.
It's interesting because you're like, oh, they don't use it. I remember when I'd leave meetings and I'd be like, I obviously did not articulate our value well enough for them, because I'm like, why would you not do this? Like, it just makes so much sense. And but yeah, that's a good takeaway. I had a client I've been calling on for over a decade, right? I'll leave the names out, but finally get in with a meeting. Going well, and at the end I just phrased something slightly wrong. And he's like, yeah, I'm not actually, don't think we're going to plan on using your service. And it's the same as the words are coming out of his mouth, right? I'm thinking, if I'd have phrased my last statement different, that response wouldn't be available because it was wording.
Yeah.
And but then that also teaches about projection, because I left, said, okay, well, I'll follow up with you next week. Right. Yeah. So I did that, and that is I still remember it was a Thursday. And I'm like, man, I got a call, and I really don't want to. I'll do it after lunch, right? And lunch was getting close, and I'm getting my headspace right to make a call. And then I get a call from the office and says, hey, so and so's on the line. I'm like, all right. So I take the call, and he's like, well, so when can you guys start?
something had changed.
Something happened in the week of time. We're evaluating it, and sometimes you do that. You go in and they don't, but when they go and evaluate what they've been doing versus what you're offering, and the light clicks, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty wild.
We have strayed far from our background story. We didn't get to hear Rod's at all. He's over there going, all right, well, you guys are leaving me out.
Well,
Rod's egging us on, though.
I started as a tech also, just in the IT side. I started with Adam as my boss here, doing compliance reporting for Rapid, and I think for years it was kind of just iteration after iteration of trying to get it better and better and more accurate and more accurate. And just, as we scaled, it had its own challenges as well. So I'm thoroughly trained in compliance reporting and how to display this stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
you started off doing like contract work for us, right?
I did. Yeah. I started off as a contractor and it was pretty primitive in the beginning. I think Sherry was doing spreadsheets.
Little shout out to Sherry. Sherry's a rock star.
Yeah.
And so just from this database to that database to, this piece of software to another, it just kept getting better and better as we went. And so.
Well, and not just the documentation itself, the information was there, but presentation is so important to me. When you're in a business, any business, right? You want to provide that panache to your client, right? You want it to look polished and refined and professional, and so we're providing that documentation to our client, and then in a lot of cases they're providing it to their client. So we got to make our stuff look, our trucks, our techs, our uniforms, our documentation, it all had to be as professional and as high quality as our premier highest level customer, because that's the watermark. If you don't perform at their level, they won't hire you. So you have to be that absolute top notch to get them as a client, and everybody else benefits from that same.
And then you get, they might call halfway through the day. So if you're not presentable halfway through the day, it's not like you can just plan their days. Like you have to all day, every day.
Had a pile of shirts in the back of your truck.
That's right. A+ game all day, every day. So, and to your point on the professionalism of the documentation, we had a demolition contractor who supplied, and he would take our logo off and put his logo on and give our documentation.
It's brutal. I mean, his colors didn't match, and everything else was red and blue, and I think he was a green or something like
it's
that.
still testament to the
America.
Right. America. So it was it's his record, he can do it, but it just goes to this, how professional it looked. Is like, why would I
reproduce that? Yeah, exactly.
Just swap the logo. Done.
So that was, Rod, you came on in like 06?
06, 07,
something like that. Yeah.
Like that.
So
we talked about it was after around the Hurricane Rita job, right? Because you were helping with those 5,000 units that we did on the island.
5,000 units.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is a Chill Under Pressure podcast, and we're sponsored by FM Hero. We're the founders of FM Hero, so you'll get to hear a fair bit of the FM Hero kind of story and whatnot. But that job is just such a reminder of how cool it would have been to have a tool like FM Hero than having to write every one of those 5,000 units down on paper. It was, I mean, I wasn't there, but I looked at the paperwork afterwards and it looked atrocious. So I feel for those guys.
I would have been thrilled to not have it coming from QuickBooks by the time I got to it.
Yeah, QuickBooks export. Rough.
Brutal.
But yeah, I mean, we started Rapid in 2002, and it wasn't too far before that. Actually, since we're talking about documentation, I had a personal experience. I was doing work at MSU, and I hadn't gotten into the route sales role yet. And
so this would have been under RMS.
Yeah, it was like 90, late 90s.
Yeah.
And I was there working, and I was doing refrigerators, white goods, and you use a piercing tool. I had the classic vice grip style with the port. We took the Schrader ports out and just went direct on, so they weren't restricting flow and all that. And of course, had valves then after that on the anyway. But you would do it. You'd rock these things. I mean, you just going. And so you'd hook up to them, right? You'd find the right spot, you'd hook up, and then the prescribed method was strike with mallet.
Right. Like, loosen up.
Right.
Frozen refrigerant.
Compressors freeze, right? And so you get a pocket of refrigerant that's stuck inside the compressor. And so striking it with a mallet would loosen that up. You could use heat too. So you'd use your torch and you'd smoke them with a hammer and all that stuff. Anyway, I was doing that. Well, one of them apparently it didn't pop loose. You don't know, right? You're hitting it.
You didn't hit it very hard.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely my issue. I found those places though. That was my stress relief. You go to those, you're like whack. Anyway, so no, apparently it didn't, and so they called or had notified the EPA somehow, and I got I got a letter in the mail, and I don't remember anymore. I wish I'd kept it. I mean, I probably did burn it. Like I think after I dealt with it, just because it was so intimidating. But I didn't keep it. But I don't know if it was like a 114 letter. I don't remember what type of letter it was, but it was an official letter, and it scared me to death. I mean, I'm a young guy just doing this, got my light, my cert. And that's
I'm barely an adult,
barely,
and my whole life is gone.
And I'm going to get arrested or something.
For a refrigerator.
Yeah, is that refrigerator? So I ended up talking to them. I mean, I called Rich, and Rich is like, I'm sure he was equally stressed, right? Because one of his employees, and we're family, so there's that too. And his business is on the line, as representative there. And he goes, well, you should call him. Like, I'm like, why don't you call him? I don't want to call him.
So, I didn't get the letter.
Yeah. So I called him. It was fine. We talked. I mean, and I told him what I did, and I asked, what happened, and what, they wouldn't tell me anything. So I ended up finding out from MSU, the guys there. I was like, what happened? And they're like, well, we didn't know what to do. And, that's a violation. We don't want it on us. And we didn't do it. And I'm like, okay, relax. Get it. So we ended up doing You
could have showed up with your friends, like wearing suits and you in handcuffs. Like, is this the guy?
Why'd you do it, man? Anyway. So I got a letter, and the reason it went away was because I documented everything. I had everything written down, and now that was old school. We had it all written down, how much refrigerant we took out, all the units that I'd done, and so it was really easy to say, yeah, I did this, and here's the weight, and here's where it went, and so it became a non-issue, and so I mean we lived that through Rapid Recovery. We lived that through. We're living that now in Hero. We're solving that issue. So anyway.
Minus the paper and the pencil.
Minus the paper and the pencil. Oh my word! Can you imagine? Like done. Would have been so cool.
Yeah. Oh, good. It's interesting though, right? Like, because you always hear like, no one gets letters when you're in a room of 3, right? And like doing refrigerators, you're not even a tech out in the you're not right. You're strictly doing recovery.
Ounces.
Yeah. Ounces. Yeah. There's your letter.
Ridiculous. So I mean, but hey, people say it's never happened. I've never heard of it. Well, I had it. It's a true story. And
and we've had clients over the years that have received them that we go to bat for. So.
We've helped people now. As it's been throughout a career. We've helped people with EPA compliance, not just doing the documentation, but when they get audited, providing that, and then answering the follow-on questions that come from that. Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, when we provide the documentation, there aren't follow-on questions, but when there are, we're there. We've been there. So. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, good joke. Hey, welcome back to Chill Under Pressure. This is Les. We had to cut there real quick because I exceed the weight capacity for these chairs apparently, and I was sinking out of frame. Sinking. So, welcome back.
Man, I'm going to mark that chair. Make sure I don't have it. I don't want to have to admit to that overweight scenario.
So yeah, we're just gonna pass it along, see who maxes it out. And obviously, I do. So we've swapped that out. We'll see how this chair fares.
There you go.
So it's been quite an experience, right? Like between starting at RMS and Rapid Recovery, and then that blurb of a disaster company in the middle there, and there between Rapid Recovery and
I still have the shirts.
RMS, do you? Yeah. And then it gave us a really unique look into the industry itself because of the vast variety from demolition to DoD to maritime to facility operators to contractors, wholesalers, reclaimers. Yeah. Right. We became a reclaimer. Yep. So
built separations. We understand that. I mean, like all those things play into how these things interact.
That's right. We should. We're gonna have we'll
have a special guest.
Yeah.
We'll bring Rich back. We're gonna bring him in. Yeah, he'll do a podcast. We'll bring Rich in. He can talk all about separation, how it works, and I think that'd be really cool.
That would be cool, and it'll be eye opening for a lot of people in that process who don't see that side of things. But I mean, I remember when we started, people were like, "Oh, but that refrigerant had a bad compressor. You can't use that refrigerant. It's bad. We're gonna charge you." I'm like, no, not the way that works. So, anyway, very unique look at all the ins and outs of the industry through a wide view down to very narrow views, right? And that really helped us come to where we are today with FM Hero.
Yeah. So I think, just feature wise with FM Hero, we started with something that's tech focused in the field. So instead of most places, they'll start with office application, and then fold it and mold it into something that the tech gets in their hands. But it's, usually a glorified spreadsheet or something not that great,
Right.
hard to use.
It's a digital, but it's very close to pen and paper.
Exactly.
We weren't going to get away with that, though, right? I mean, we had this reputation for the quality of the documentation we were already delivering personally, right, from our background. And so I don't think that there was any chance we were going to get away with not having
something subpar.
Yeah.
Right. It had to exceed expectations out the gate.
Right out the gate.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, with our wide experience before, we were able to take that into the app and design it from a technician's point of view. And so I think that's the most valuable point, or part of our application, is just that it's made for techs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're shouting that as loud and as widely as we can possibly say it, because I think there's kind of this black cloud over past apps.
We've had in doing some of our demos, we've had that exact feedback. Like they'll be like, "Wow, we've looked at a lot of software, nothing that has considered the technician in the field, the way this does."
Well, and that was Rod's right. I mean, we had to start there. Mm-hmm. We had to start with because that really solves the problem. I mean, the fundamental problem that we're solving with FM Hero, for those guys who are listening, is that the documentation stream is only as good as its foundational initial source, that single source of truth, as we like to call it. And so if you have multiple sources of truth, paper on one guy, and then it's transposed into one Excel sheet, and then it's copy and pasted, or somebody else types it again into a different system, some other web tool, or whatever it might be, that's a problem. But the real start of that is when it comes out of the field, it has to be really accurate and clean and good, right? Mm-hmm. That starts the whole process. And so,
and the fewer people that touch it after that, the cleaner it stays.
That's right.
Imagine that.
Yeah. And then every user who comes back out and says, well, hey, wait a minute, that unit is actually cooling the kitchen. And they add that piece of information. And then the next guy comes out and he says, well, that one, that unit is a multi-circuit, or that unit has, whatever the parameters are, or they want to name it, right? It's got an A1 on the side of it, or it's on circuit number W3F14, whatever. And they add that information into the system. It makes it better and better and better for every future user, as opposed to the current tools that are out there. So the real thing had to start in the field.
And the other, for that. And then, and this is a little off from that, because you're right, because you're talking about how you keep the data clean and accurate, right? The other aspect of it for the technicians is, since 2019, they're required to maintain their own personal records, right? Yeah. Which was a change and a lot of them still don't know.
Right.
A lot of the schools we talk to still don't know.
Well, it's weird because they I mean, the reality was they kind of always were, right? I mean, when even in the 90s, you were like, oh, here's your book, and you get this paper logbook, and you're supposed to fill out all your stuff, right? And that's how you know what you did. But it was clarified and certainly became a lot more direct. The technician is responsible for providing this documentation, maintaining it, and providing the EPA loves to and I'm not bagging on the EPA, but they like to have different terms, right? So the guy who does the documentation isn't the same one who has to maintain it. But that's thinking like in a world where you hand a piece of paper, I wrote it out, now it's yours.
Right.
And the reality is I would never, even back in the day, you'd have a carbon copy.
Yep.
Right. You could write it down on your notebook, and you'd give them one sheet and you'd keep the other one. And so
that's how we think about it in the app too. We're calling it a carbon copy on the back end, because whatever you do at that point in time, you want to lock that in and show that that's absolutely what happened in the field. And then someone else, from the office or whatever, they can access that same data and look at it. But whatever was done in the field is locked in.
Right.
So the historic part of it doesn't change. That's what we're going after. But to Adam's point, as people are coming back and servicing that same unit again and again, now different pieces of information are being added to that. That makes it better for everyone.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot on Hero, but that gives you a good story on who we are too. Our background, how we got here, starting out in the field doing recovery, starting out doing sales for less, and then coming up through that period into Rapid, building the world's largest refrigerant recovery company, and transitioning that over to AGAS, and then saying, hey, we know of another problem that we want to solve, and so we came out and decided to get together and sat around and said, hey, should we do this? Is this crazy? And to be honest, I mean, like, we ask that question daily. Are we crazy for having done this? It's, the same things you're talking about with people in past roles where you say the wrong thing or whatever, they want to wait. I mean, that's any business, right? That's true here today for Hero too. People look at it and they're like, man, do I even need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that real?
Right.
Well, I don't want another app. I'm always amazed, and this is off topic, but I'm always amazed when, they'll download 25 games and 52 different apps for personal, like, they've got Twitter and they've got or X and they've got, Insta, and they've got all this stuff, and they'll doom scroll for days. I mean, I will do this too. Right? So this is not a dig on anybody else, but then you talk about a business app, right? You're like, hey, this will help your career. This will help you. This goes with you. It's not just about your contractor. It's not about your place of employment. This is your personal protection for your career. And I think that, as people start to get that concept, they're like, I really do want to protect myself. But at first they're like, I don't want another thing to do. I'm already too busy at work. I can't do anymore. I don't need another app.
As they pull out their pen and paper.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean,
on some places, you got to enter it somewhere.
A lot. I mean, we all know that there's a lot of places out there that are providing their technicians with other tablet-based, phone-based tools, but they don't do the documentation piece, and they don't stay with the tech. The tech leaves that job, goes to another one, and I'll tell you what, records. If somebody comes up to you as a technician, and look, we don't make any money off technicians, so I'm now like pitching the freebie, which is so weird, right? Yeah. But I mean, from those guys' perspective, I mean, if you leave and somebody questions the work that you did on a job and questions whether you vented or somebody because the EPA is not fast, so if the nosy neighbor catches you on film purging nitrogen. Right. Mm-hmm. And yet they think you're venting refrigerant.
Sounds the
same, looks the same. Both have oil mist coming out with them. Like it's not a great day. And so you leave, you quit that job because you don't like that boss, whatever. You get a better offer. Move, whatever the reason is. And now the EPA comes in like 4 months later and finally says, hey, on this date, you had this incident happen.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Or 18 months later.
You're not going to remember or 2 years and 363 days later they come because
it's a 3-year deal.
And so they come in and you're like, I don't remember anything. And so you don't work there anymore. You're not going back to your previous boss. They're not giving it to you. They're not giving you that documentation. They're not going to say, oh yeah, you recovered that. You can tell the EPA, well, let's go talk to my contractor. They have all the documentation. And the reality is you're safer. I wouldn't put my trust in the boss I no longer work for.
Right.
If I don't want to work there anymore, I don't want my career tied to their ability to keep documentation for me.
Yeah.
So,
and even if they're, it's still amicable, right? You make the call. Like, it's so hard for them to pull that information. Well,
like, and they have no incentive.
No incentive. They're busy running their business.
Right. They got stuff to do.
And it's not an easy process.
So anyway, for all those people who say, "Oh, I've never heard of a contractor getting it or getting violated or having the EPA come and knock on their door," well, they don't knock on your door. They send you a letter, and then from there it turns into they send you the fine or they send you the notice, right? So to show
an interview, things like that.
Yeah. But I mean, like as it gets worse and worse down the road, down the progressive process,
right?
It starts with a letter, and it has. I mean, every part technician. I was one.
Yeah.
And there are others, by the way. Technicians, contractors, wholesalers, importers, manufacturers, reclaimers. There is no part of our ecosystem that hasn't been touched by violation, by EPA compliance issues. And so, I mean, I think it's just naive. And people go, well, I don't never hear about it. Nope. Nobody's talking about it on the golf course. Nobody's be like, yeah, man, I gotta like, it's not like, oh, I got pulled over speeding the other day. This is like,
and they're not broadcasting it broadly, right?
And the EPA is not. So if your buddy in the golf course isn't telling you at the trade association or the golf course, and the EPA is doing a really poor job, I'm not picking on the EPA. That's not their thing, but they don't do a great job with the smaller guys. Everybody hears about when a big corporation gets smoked, right? By the stuff that's on the news.
Yeah.
But they don't put the news on when Jim's heating
Adam
an air.
Dykstra invents a refrigerator.
Right.
And then you go back to that and go like,
maybe I can still get the paperwork. FOIA request.
But like you were saying though, what protected you was the documentation that you were able to get, right? and have on hand and show a past history of it. And that's
So
what
what-
you'd have with.
What
You know,
happens
that
when you
here.
don't have that?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It turns
Yeah.
out very differently for you.
It can. I mean,
Yeah.
it also can. I mean, they could go. It's a small situation. We've never had something on you before. Nobody's ever raised an issue with you. What you're saying makes sense in the interview.
Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah.
But or they've interviewed other people,
Mm-hmm.
and they out of that information they say, okay, we're not going to pursue. So it's possible.
Yeah.
But I just don't like. I mean, I wouldn't want to leave my career in the hands of. It's possible that goes away. Like
Right.
it all depends on if you got Barney Fife on the other end or if you got Andy. I mean,
Right.
if Andy's on the other end, you're probably
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
If it's Barney, you're
Yeah.
going to
A
spend
lot
a
of
night in
trouble.
jail.
And if you're in the middle, they'll be like, we're going to take your refrigerant handler card, go back to school, do something different.
Yeah. You're 57 years old. You get to start your life over.
Yeah.
So guys, we're going to be doing a bunch of these. We've got other topics coming up.
Yeah.
We talked about doing something on separation. We're going to have a kind of a special guest here in a while, in a month or so. We'll figure out the timeline on that. But a special guest coming in out of the Reclaim world who's going to talk about that process and what it looks like, and
That'd be
how to
fun
get
too.
the most value for your product. We've got some friends over in our marketing crew that are going to come by and talk about their startup and what that looks like for them and what it's like to work with us through the years, because we've been with them for a long time, even
Right.
before Hero. We'll have some other outside guests who run some other podcasts too. So stick with us. Come join us again. We'll come back around with some cool content. So thanks for coming out.
Chill under pressure. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
I'm Les.
Rodney.
And I'm out.